Hey members, welcome back. Okay, so in this video I'm going to show you how to do these beaded branches and then how to attach it to your earring frame. I did not show you how to make this earring frame because you have them from your live stream and also from the last video I did that shows this. It's an outtake of your live stream, and these are the same earrings. It's pretty much, these are a little bit smaller and I didn't attach that center wire is all. So in the video that you're about to see, what I used was 26 gauge wire to tie these beads together. But what I discovered midway was that the first earring I did, I used 28 gauge, which is what this is. It's a little bit finer wire, a little more lightweight. Either 26 or 28 gauge will work. I went ahead off screen and I took this one apart and redid it in 28 gauge so that my earrings matched. But when you're watching the video, you'll notice I show you one that's done, this one, and then we do one together, and you'll notice that the weaving wire is a little bit thicker. And I didn't realize why until midstream. But anyway, it kind of worked out good because you can see the difference between 26 and 28 gauge, and then you can use whatever you prefer. I think I prefer the 28 gauge. It's a little more delicate looking and it's a little softer to work with, certainly. And in my case, I thought it was a little bit easier to work with. But I handled them in the exact same way that I showed you on the video. The only difference is that I used 28 gauge, and that's the finer look. Alright, you guys, so enjoy the beaded branches. I hope you made a lot of these framed earrings because you can set these up in many ways, and I'll send up some more videos for you to show you how. These are peacock pearls and they're gorgeous as well, but I do the tourmaline with you. Alright, so enjoy the video, and I can't wait to see what you guys create with your beautiful beads. Good morning, members. I hope you guys have been enjoying these earring tutorials. We learned to build these hammered earring frames in last month's live stream. It was December 30th, that Saturday, that last Saturday. And then I kept talking about how, you know, you can bead them, you can weave them up, you can do all kinds of stuff. And a few of you emailed and said, well, how do we tie beads on there? So I'm going to show you. I'm going to use some tourmaline beads here. I've got a variety of, they're irregular shaped, but they're kind of ovalish. And then I've got some strawberry quartz, these two right here. And I have a couple of little pink crystal quartz down here and a fun green bead. I'm not quite sure what that one is, but it's cute. All right, and I'm tying these together with some 26 gauge wire. I'll get about 1.5 feet to make sure that I have enough. It seems like a lot for that little bit, but since we're going around the beads a few times, it really eats up the wire. So let's start with 1.5 feet of 26 gauge wire, and you'll get your little assortment of beads together. And certainly you have to get them times 2, right? Because we have 2 earrings. So I have my second set of beads down here on the table that I've picked out that resemble this set of beads, and then we'll do this earring here. So I've got my 1.5 feet of 26 gauge, and I like to start about 3 inches in from the end to make sure that you've got enough to tie on with. And I'm going to drop my very first bead on here, which is in this case the green one. I'll slide it in and I'll give myself about 3 inches to spare. I'll work with the long end of this 1.5 feet. Once I get my bead slipped in there, it's a little awkward because it's such a small wire and it's flimsy, right? 26 gauge isn't much, but you work it delicately around your bead, and then you tie your first route. And I'll make a couple of little wraps here. Just work patiently. And then I'm going to keep on the long end here. I'll just keep the short end off to my side. And I'm building my leaf, well, my branches, my beaded branches this way. So I'll come over here and get into position for the next bead, which for me is going to be one of these little pink tourmalines. They're oval shaped. It's a great way to use kind of these oval shaped beads, but they're not exactly calibrated, right? They're a little bit mismatched, but they're fun. And I'll just slide that into place. You know, making these together would have probably been the better way to go so that I could get them the same, but you just hold one up against the other. So there's my green one, and now I'm going to wrap a little pink one off to the side there. So I'm going to give myself some space between the last wrap, just a couple of millimeters there, and I'll hold my bead in the air in between my two fingers, take the wrap around. Right here, just hold everything together. Take the wire around that little neck. It's delicate, sure, but you can do it. And then if I want to double wrap the bead, so I've got half of it here, and then I've gone 360 around the stem, and now I'll just hold all that between my fingers, because that's kind of how you do this, and I'll take the wire around that little bead again, back down here to the stem, and you'll go a couple of times around there. Sometimes I like to go 3 or 4 times just to make it substantial, so it's not just a flimsy little wire. So I'll go about 4 times there. Okay? Then I'll get into position for my next pink bead. I have 6 of these little tourmalines on here. I'll just work it down here into its position. I'll give about 2 or 3 millimeters below the bead with some wire. And I'll go around the bead. And it's up to you if you go around, you know, 1 time or twice, but you gotta at least anchor this one. And then you can go around it twice. You know, once on the opposite side if you want to. And this wire will jiggle off the bead here and there, and that's okay. You just work it carefully. It's 26 gauge, so it's like almost like working with thread, just a little bit more. So there goes my second wrap. And I'll anchor it by making a couple more wraps around the stem. And I like to just kind of hold on to the bead, and you give a little tension here and turn it. Try to make your coils side by side. Okay, so there's the first 2. And now I'm just going to continue working down. So I've got a green one, and I've got 2 pink ones here. So now I've got 2 more pink ones and 2 more pink ones. So it looks like I kept kind of my darker pink ones up top, and then I had 2 lighter pink ones. So here's my next one. I'll give myself a few millimeters there to get it branched out a little bit. And in this case, the bead is small, this one. So I'll just go around once, you know, half the time, half here. Hold on to the bead right there and the wire. Bring the wire around the neck of these, the stem. Oh, you kind of have to hold the whole cluster a little bit in your fingers to keep it all stable as you work. So there's the third one. And then I'll come down here and get another pink bead for my fourth one. And since this one I went around to the left, maybe this one I'll start by going around this way so that the wire accent is on the opposite side of this bead. I'm trying not to scatter all my beads down here with my wire. It's a little squirrely, but that's okay. We're used to squirrely and you can do it. So I like to get 2 or 3 little wraps there so the neck looks good. And then I'll get into position for another pink one. One, two, three, four, 5. I might go around this neck one more time here just because 2 looks kind of spindly on that longer bit of wire there. This is very delicate hands, right? It's easier to be a little bit light-handed on these tiny things than to be very firm-handed. So about right there, that looks good to me. Come around my bead, try to stay close. That one's a little misshapen. Just pull it and get a little closer. And certainly it'd probably be easier for me if I wasn't underneath the camera and trying to stay in focus for you guys, but I think you get the idea here. Go around once more. It's not hard. The hardest part of doing this is actually picking out all your beads and making sure you've got enough for each earring. So it's kind of like one to the left, one to the right, one to the left. And you just put them there, right? It's not necessarily how you wrap them more than, you know, I could turn them and switch them after this whole thing if I wanted to. So I have one more pink bead to put on, pink tourmaline. And then I'm going to start with my strawberry quartz. But I'll get up to the frame first. Woo! That one's kind of tricky. Sometimes you run into a bead where the hole just doesn't want to happen for you. In that case, maybe this one. Yep. So luckily for me, I have another one. And I'll just switch it out. So here goes my 6th tourmaline. And I'm just going to get up here against this other one and make sure that I'm fairly consistent in my spacing. And I am. Once I work them all out, and that's good. So I'll get this next one put on, and I think on this one I'll do a double. I'll come around both sides. So here's one side, and I'm gonna lock into the neck, slant my wire up, and come around the bead again. Use your fingers like a little landing pad to help you. Get a nice circle around the bead, and then go a couple of times around your tiny wire. Okay. That looks pretty good. So now let's see what we got. So I've got one green one up here to be my top stem, my top leaf. And you see how I can just motion these. They're tied on individually, so you're not going to lose them unless you break them. Okay, so that's pretty good. Let me get over here onto my earring. Ooh, look how lovely that looks. put it next to this one. And you see here, I've tied to the center that one of the wires that came down the center of the earring. And I've tied off in a couple of spots. One up here at the very beginning wire that we started. And then I let my tourmalines trail down, and then I attached before I added my tiny little round crystals. So this whole thing is kind of free form in here, and I could shift it if I want to. You could tie in more if you want to. I don't feel it's necessary so long as you know, they're not too far apart and it's stable. Okay, so I'm going to take this bunch of beads, and I'm going to take this earring wire, this earring hook off, because it's a little bit easier if you don't have the hook on. You're not fighting the hook. I'll pass that leading wire, that starting wire, through here, and of course I'll tie it to my frame a couple of times, just like I did my other one. And it's as easy as that, you guys. You can pick, you know, all different kinds of beads. I'll show you a bunch of varieties here soon. And then if you have a bigger earring or you want more volume, you can use more than one wire and add density to these beads. This is kind of branch style, so it's like one and then one and one and one. But you could cluster them like this guy. And I'll show us how to do that here in a second. But first we'll get this one tied on, and I'll give you this one. You know, if you used 3 or 4 wraps on the other earring, then use 3 or 4 wraps on this one. Try to keep them consistent. Once you get it tied on, you can just, you know, slip it up to the top there and get it positioned. There you go. And then just kind of shape the beads. Certainly we want to terminate the wire in the back so you don't see the cut. And you just use as many of those wraps as you need. And then you have a little bit in case you want to add another little tiny bead or something up there if you need it or want it. So I'll cut it off back here. I'll use my fine plier and just tap that cut down. Make sure it's nice and neat. And then I'll kind of compare myself to this earring, the first earring, and position my beads. And then start to work down the earring now. I've got 2 strawberry quartz crystals that are a little bit bigger than my 2 final little pink crystals here. So with this wire, the fragment that's remaining that's long, you remember I attached onto the earring down here, so I'm going to make 3 or 4 wraps right there and attach myself to this earring frame. Just hold your beads in place. That's just like sewing them on, right? Just do your little wrap, get it living nice right there. I'll make a few more times, a couple more times. And then I'll use the remainder of this wire. Oh, I got that middle part. I'll use the remainder of this wire and I'll add my 2 strawberry quartz, which are a little bit bigger than the 2 crystal quartz that I have right below it. So I have like this little graduate, you know, it graduates into a smaller one. So there are a few wraps. I'm happy with how that looks. And now I'll go ahead and pick up a strawberry quartz. I'll add it onto there. I'll land it on my wire. And then just make a couple more wraps. I think actually I added 2 of them. I did. So let me get my second strawberry quartz on here. I lost it. It's rolled off the table already. That's okay. I have another one. Let me get another strawberry quartz right here. Woo! The hardest part is finding the tiny hole in these tiny beads. So I've got 2 crystals added. Before I tie it on again, I'll just make sure they're living against the frame. Hold them in place there with my thumb, and then get my wrap wire. And you kind of got to hold on to the bead so it doesn't fall behind the frame, but once you get a couple of wraps, then it stays. So there's one. There's 2. And I think I did the same thing with my little tiny pink ones. I dropped 2 of them and then did a couple of wraps. So I'll wrap one more time for 3. Keep them pushed back so your beads sit all nice together. And then I'll pick up my 2 little tiniest pink quartz. They're just pink crystal quartz. And I'll add them. There we go. And just position them with your finger until you get them living where you like them. Sometimes you need a little bit of slack in the wire, or else they fall. That's okay, you just put it back in position and then wrap it on. I think here, yeah, I got it just kind of just like that. So here too, just like that. I'm going to shift. Be real careful about using pliers against these tiny beads, they break. So I just barely touched my plier to it just to help me turn that tiny little bead in the direction that I wanted it. Ooh. There we go. And then I'll end this with 4 wraps just like I did the other earring. And then I'll cut that off back here. And I'll try to cut it off so that it lays inside the frame and not back on the back of it. So in other words, in here. Can't see the cut, and I can't feel the cut. And now just with my fingers, I'm just going to position everything. Make sure your beads don't slide down the bar. They kind of jiggle sometimes. I like to push these up on top so I can see them. And that's that. And we'll put the earring hook back on. And now we have 2 very beautiful beaded earrings. And I'll just use my fingers and make them similar on both sides. Scooch these around a little bit. Stretch them out or position them if you need to. And it's nice. It's cute. And there you go. Alright you guys, so now we'll do another one. Actually, I'll do this little video and give it to you so you can get started on something. And then I'll do another one with you. But in the meantime, I'll show you a few for some inspiration. So I love the cranberry pearl. So here's a bunch of cranberry pearls that I did. And I did it the exact same way as this earring here. But you see how the center is bare? And here in the center, all I did was I fed that wire back up and added beads as I went. So I put some more on and I put some more on, and then I came up here and put a green one on and tied off, and then used the upper wire to tie these two green ones on. And that's a nice fun cluster. See, on the back here I don't have the beads in the middle, so it would look like that. Or you could put beads in the middle and, you know, make it a little more substantial if you wanted to. Alright, so there's an example. And then I have, ooh, I love my peacock pearls too. These tiny little peacock pearls that I did in the exact same way. I just inserted a couple of little copper seed beads in between, right? So before I put the next pearl on, I slipped on a couple of copper beads, then put the pearl on, and did the same wrap and continued up with the pearl. So I'll show you how to do that kind of style, but those are very pretty. And then for the leaf, I actually used two pieces of 26 gauge, one going down just like we did here, and then I added a second wire going across. I just literally tied it onto the middle so that I could have another wire to add some beads on top. And this one I probably should have done them together so that I could remember what I did, but I can get them close just by doing one at a time. Or what a beautiful pendant that makes too. And I added some copper balls up here with the fragment that I left on top and tied it all to the stem. Alright, how cute are these, you guys? Alright, so I'll see you for another one soon, and I'll give you this one so that you can play with your beads and add them to your earrings. So cute. Thanks, you guys. We'll see you for the next one.